Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Zan, and I'm excited to have this episode with you guys today. So I'm going to be covering Peter Thiel. If you guys are new here, you're going to have to go back and review my old episode. Wow, 17 right here. So anyways, go back to review this episode. I broke this video back in March 26. This is the video that actually led me to meeting Alter of Ego, so a pretty cool story there. But I connect the dots between Peter Thiel and him funding OpenCoin. And OpenCoin is Ripple now. So it's Ripple, connects to XRP. And in this video today, I'm going to show you proof that Peter Thiel was talking about Bitcoin back in 1999. He was talking about a new form of money that could be on your cell phone that would take them having to cut all telephone communication completely off. Sound familiar? To destroy this currency. That's basically Bitcoin. So a lot has happened since I made this video. Peter Thiel also is on the board of Facebook. He funded Palantir. He's done so much. SpaceX, Peter Thiel. So he's behind the scenes. He's one of the people they don't show. So one of the Mr. Pool posts today on Twitter was these puppets, right? There's the guy with the puppets on the string. So how come we never hear about Peter Thiel, but we hear about Elon Musk all the time? Because Peter Thiel isn't one of the puppets on the string. Peter Thiel is his own man. He's the boss. He is the Don of the PayPal mafia. They all answer to him. So he's one of the guys up top, and then you got the puppets making a bunch of noise. The people up top, they don't want to be known. They're not going to be on Saturday Night Live. Peter Thiel is not ever going to be on Saturday Night Live. I'll tell you that. So some new information that got past me. Well, let's go back over here. So since I made that video, Peter Thiel's been making a lot more noise. His buzz around the community has grown, and the New Yorker has even wrote a article about him saying the rise of Thielist. Basically, has the Republic Party found its post-Trump ideology, and they're talking about Peter Thiel. And all Peter Thiel wants to do is to innovate, to create more, to make America a better place through technology and innovation. He says we have been stagnant for way too long, and when countries and nations are stagnant, that's when a lot of problems happen within a nation. When there's growth, there's abundance, there's people have exciting jobs to work at because they're doing new things. Like everybody that probably helped create like the first airplane was probably super excited to be a part of that. So we need to innovate more. We haven't really done much as far as innovation. I mean, like the cell phones are cool, but like if you really start to think about innovation, we haven't done that much in the past 100 years. Actually, the powers that be have stifled and like limited us as far as because of greed. But that's a whole another topic. So I'm going to show you guys a few videos where it's basically Peter Thiel claiming to be in a room with he thinks Satoshi. So he basically was talking about some conference way back in the day where he believes Satoshi was probably there. Well, what if he was talking about himself? He could highly likely be Satoshi, in my opinion, or be part of the team that created Satoshi. One of the things that he said, he talks about an electronic currency that failed named e-gold back in the day. And he said the reason why it failed is because the central government could always go after one person and stop it. So if he knew that, why wouldn't he keep himself? He's one of the only people I know that would be smart enough to keep himself completely decentralized. Like we haven't heard about him through this whole Great Awakening and movement till now. Like obviously, he's good at staying in the shadows. So this is the big key point that Alter of Ego actually shared with me is part of the PayPal Mafia's original team with Peter Thiel, they were required to read this book. It's called by Neil Stevenson. It's called a crypto. I don't even know how to say it. But it's basically a book about cryptography, and this was the PayPal Mafia's required reading. So here it is. So look it up. You could verify this on, actually, let's just verify it together that I'm not full of shit. Okay, so also Jay Clayton has a whole thing about this in Wikipedia as well. Let's do. So Peter Thiel states in his book Zero to One that Cryptonomicon, however you say it, was required reading during the early days of PayPal. Let's see who else has read this book. According to critic Jay Clayton, the book is written for technical or geek audience. So he says it's the ultimate geek novel. Jay Clayton has read it as well. So PayPal Mafia has really spread its wings across crypto. Like there's connections between Stellar and PayPal Mafia, and then of course Ripple. So I'm gonna play you guys these videos from Peter Thiel, and then what I want to do is I'm not gonna narrate it. So I'm gonna let you guys give your own opinion in the comment section. You guys watch it. Let me know. Do you think Peter Thiel is Satoshi? Do you think he knows and is aware of who Satoshi is? Or do you think that he is totally ignorant and he doesn't actually know? So yeah, watch those videos. And after I went on an amazing hike the other day and I wanted to make a video. So I made a video about the difference of a central movement and a decentral movement, and why it's important in this new, if we're moving to a decentralized world, why it's important for us to move as a collective rather than look up to a central leader. And I believe Peter Thiel is smart enough and intelligent enough to know that. And all these good people that are really on top, and like Mr. Poole says, they're not actually the puppets on the string, they're up here controlling the show. They know that as well. That's why we have all these operations, these faceless operations like 17. Mr. Poole, they're all nudging humanity to come together and realize, oh, we're the ones that need to rise up. There's no superhero that's going to come to save us. It's us. And we need to get to that place in order to be able to be sovereign again, in order to govern ourselves. We have to be at a certain consciousness level to being a sovereign, I'm responsible of me, decentral system. So we have to go through these operations as a collective to like raise everybody up. So we don't need a father figure anymore. We could be our own lead. We can lead ourselves. So I have a whole clip about the difference between a central and decentral movement. So that'll be all there. All right, guys, peace. Let me end this clip now.
One of the questions is, how do you move from these physical dollars to electronic dollars? I think the basic technology is going to take place on the internet. I think the specific platform in the emerging world is going to be on a cell phone platform. If you look at the numbers, there are about 360 million, about 150 million online desktop-based accounts today. That number is projected to grow to about 350 million in the next 5 years. However, with respect to cell phones, internet-enabled cell phones, they're just getting rolled out right now. They already have some significant penetration in Japan, in Finland, in Sweden. They're getting rolled out in Western Europe, the US next year. The numbers are projected to grow from about 10 million internet-enabled cell phones today to about 1 billion in 5 years. In 5 years from now, everybody who is a member of the middle class in the emerging world and in the developed world will have an internet-enabled cell phone. And this sort of a cell, in China, the number is projected to go to something like 300 million cell phones, most of which will be internet-enabled. These people will have access to their bank accounts, and it will be very easy for them to move money into an account in a safe jurisdiction where the banks are not politically controlled, and they will basically be able to completely dollarize the economy. There will be no need to have any rubles or renminbi, and it will be non-traceable. No matter how illegal the Chinese Communist government says it is to hold US dollars, you will have a password on your cell phone, and the only way to stop this process would be literally to shut down the telecommunications network. And that's the kind of choice governments like China, India, some of these other countries are going to face. They will either have to shut down the telecommunications network and make it illegal for you to own a cell phone, or they will have to basically give up the kind of monetary sovereignty they've had and the enormous power that they've been able to wield as a result of this kind of sovereignty over the last many, many years. And I think this process is already full-fledged. The dollarization worldwide is going to be accelerated enormously by the technology. Now, the second theme is a little bit more speculative, and that is that getting rid of money altogether, going from digital dollars, from any kind of government-backed currency to purely private currencies. And what a private currency, or what private money, I think, fundamentally means is that there is no medium of exchange. You exchange value for value rather than exchanging value for something the government says has value for value. And whenever you have this intermediate step of the government saying something has value, that's where you have the subterfuge, the sort of legerdemain come in, the game of musical chairs where every now and then a chair gets pulled out and it turns out that you're the one holding a dollar bill that's all of a sudden become worth a little bit less. And the kind of exchange of value for value, the classic model would have been some sort of a barter model. That obviously has enormous transaction costs associated with it. These transaction costs go down in a digital age. And the kind of model that I think is the most likely to take place is one where you have other kinds of financial instruments that are very, very liquid. The one I would cite in the U.S. would be something like an index on the S&P 500. Or some sort of generalized stock market index, where instead of having currency as being the place where you have value, it is in real property, real companies, things that actually have real value. And so that you might conduct business by trading not dollars, but trading little slivers of the S&P 500 or of particularly large stocks like Microsoft or something like that. My guess is that it might be the whole stock market as a whole, and that as you trade these things, that's where you have the kind that becomes in effect a de facto currency. Now, this is still pretty far-fetched, but it is not quite as far-fetched as you might think. And just as we've had people in Russia replace rubles with dollars, we have had people in the U.S. replace dollars with equity. And over the last 20 years, one of the very big sort of financial debates that takes place is whether the U.S. equity market is wildly overvalued or whether it's at a fair value or undervalued or anything like that. And one of the things people often talk about in making judgments about whether the equity market is overvalued is something called the risk premium on stocks. What is the expected return on equity over government bonds? And for much of the 20th century, the risk premium has been enormous. It's been something like 7-8% in the 1930s, 1940s, and even a decade ago it was still 4 or 5%. You expected to earn 4 or 5% more on equity than on bonds, and that's why they were priced. Today, the risk premium on equity has gone down to about 2%. And so people are saying they're not much more risky than government bonds. Now, if we really carry this digital argument to its conclusion, there will come a day at which the risk premium might be zero. If you actually look at the volatility in price, it's about the same. There's a strong theoretical reason for suggesting the risk premium should be zero, and maybe it should even be negative. Maybe at the end of the day, companies like Microsoft and McDonald's and Intel and the whole conglomeration of companies has more intrinsic value than any given government, even the U.S. government. So if you believe that that sort of trend is going to take place, we are already starting to see this kind of displacement. And again, it's always a question of whether you want to impute this particular explanation to it, but I think it is one interpretation of what's been happening with the equity markets is that they're basically starting to function as currency. And of course, this is the way people talk about stocks all the time, is that it's driven by liquidity, it's driven by people putting money into stocks, all of these things, because that's where people perceive the true value to really reside. There are some, questions in terms of what can go wrong with a scenario. And sort of, I agree with Richard on an awful lot of things. One place where I will disagree is not a big fundamental disagreement, but it's a disagreement on emphasis. Is I don't think the big fights on this are going to be fought in Washington, D.C. I think that, actually it's for all the reasons Richard cited. The people in D.C. are completely backwards. They don't understand any of the technology, and even to the extent they can, it can't be stopped. You cannot stop things on the level of Washington, D.C. in terms of shutting down these encryption protocols, things like that.
You know, I have all these speculative thoughts on who Satoshi is, and and the Bitcoin origin story. And without stating precisely who, who I think it is. Let me give what I think is the key origin story for Bitcoin. We were at this when I started PayPal. We were at this financial cryptography I went to this financial cryptography conference in Anguilla in early 2000, sort of an annual conference, and they have sort of this gathering of people who are libertarian and into cryptocurrencies, and probably a decent number of people working at the NSA and spying for the U.S. government and other governments as well. So it's sort of this rather interesting gathering of people. And my theory is that Satoshi was at that conference, or at one like that in early 2000, and that these ideas were germinated in the late 90s already. And one of the manifestations of cryptocurrency at that particular conference was a system called e-gold, and it was anonymous encrypted electronic gold certificates. And it was a company. It was based in southern Florida. They had these servers distributed all over the planet. But it was, in theory, this gold-based alternative to the dollar. It was going to be encrypted and safe. And there were all these problems with e-gold. We made it interoperable with PayPal. It turned out there was sort of a lot of criminal fraud, criminal activity. Maybe that's always part of the territory of these things. We sort of disconnected it. But the people who started it eventually got in a lot of trouble. The whole system was shut down. The company was targeted. They were prosecuted. I don't think they went to jail, but the whole thing was sort of disbanded. And there was something about the e-gold architecture that was, in theory, a cryptocurrency, and in theory, fairly decentralized, with their servers in Iceland and Dubai and one or two other places. But in practice, it was still centrally attackable by the larger central government. And I believe the true Bitcoin origin story was in contrast to e-gold. It's almost the same name in a way. It's like e-gold, Bitcoin. It has roughly the same. It's like you were thinking about e-gold. Like, I'm going to do the next e-gold. I'm going to change e to bit and coin to gold. It was sort of a contrast to that. And so I think the reason we do not know who Satoshi is integral to the history of Bitcoin. If we knew who it was, our too powerful central government would probably do some very unpleasant things to that person.
I think a lot of people are underestimating the way in which Bitcoin and the blockchain are going to change the power structures in society in general. I grew up in the US, and I see all these people like, yeah, nuke everybody in the Middle East and kill them all. And then they have the former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright on 60 Minutes, one of the most popular news shows in the US, and they asked her, they said, like, there's reports that more than 500,000 Iraqi children have died as a direct result of US sanctions. And she looks back at her with a straight face and she goes, it was a really tough decision, but I think that it was worth it. Worth murdering 500,000 kids because of what the government did? And I apologize for crying, but it just disgusts me from my core when I see government people murdering people around the world. It's not just theoretical. These are real people with real lives. And it's real people, and Bitcoin has the power to undermine everything they're doing to people around the world. And I'm sorry for shouting, but it just disgusts me what these people in government do. And they do it through central banking and through the control of the money supply, and Bitcoin takes that away from them.
I wanted to make this quick video because I've been having a lot of things going through my mind recently. So if the whole point of cryptocurrency is to decentralize the level playing field, to take away the power of the person that's being in control, take away the power from the elite, whatever we want to call them, then why is it that so many people are dependent and seeking an authority figure? They want a leader to lead them, to hold their hand. I believe that's the exact opposite of what cryptocurrency is all about. It's about you becoming the leader. It's about you becoming the bank. It's about you becoming the elite. I'm not going to mention the names. I just think it's funny that someone just pops up out of nowhere and tells us that we need a leader, a central figure to lead the XRP community to the promised land. I don't need no central figure. The opposite of central is decentral. We've been in a centralized system. That's why all the movements in the past have been dependent on one individual. So like Martin Luther King, when he passed away, the civil rights, his movement kind of got weaker, right? Because he was the central figure of that movement. Gandhi too, Gandhi and his movement, they were the central figure. In the future is decentralized, which means there's no one person. It's an idea, it's a movement, it's a consciousness. And that's where I believe the future is. So anyone telling you that you need a leader, I believe is leading you down the wrong way, because that's not what the future is.